Hello and welcome back. This is Alon's Adventure, and today's forgotten module is going to be CM6 Where Chaos Reigns. Written back in 1983 by Graham Morris, with some help on the storyline by Jim Bambra and Phil Gallagher, this module was designed for 6 to 10 characters of levels 17 to 19. Now, if those names sound slightly familiar to you, it could be from Warhammer Fantasy, or it could be from B10 Night's Dark Terror, or the fact that these guys pretty much wrote every single adventure in the TSR UK team. Now, like I said, this adventure was designed for levels 17 through 19, which correlates with the C bracket of BECMI, which stands for Companion. Now, usually at the Companion level, PCs will be maxed out at HP values and be mainly focusing on domain management, like, dealing with their fief that they got, taking care of their castle, raising armies, invading other territories, taking care of their church or cult, or whatever they want to call it, one of those things. However, in this module, they'll be back to some good old adventuring, just like the good old days. For those of my listeners that are from a more current edition of Dungeons & Dragons, this level is comparable to levels 12 to 15, unlike from 3rd to 5th edition level comparisons. And to get this module usable in your campaign world, you really only need 3 things, and it's pretty simple. You need some form of gods, or some sort of religion. 2, you need the concept of parallel worlds. And 3, you need to figure out how to deal with mass combat. I mean, you could use the mass combat system that you find in BECMI, in the Rules Cyclopedia. I'm not a fan of it. But as long as you have a way to deal with that, you'll be able to deal with certain parts of this module. It's not the complete book, it's just like a singular part, but it's still in there. Also, another positive is what happens in this adventure is not going to really impact your main campaign world. Oh, and somehow, these guys mixed in parallel world jumping like we're in Sliders, along with time traveling, an epic campaign, saving the world, and a little bit of genocide on the side. They crammed it all into 24 pages. That's pretty good work. I mean, that's a lot of stuff to fit into 24 pages. I'll go over a brief synopsis of this entire adventure. So the Immortals, which is BECMI D&D's version of gods, have noticed a disturbance in the Force on one of the many different parallel worlds that worship them. This world is called Alos, and someone has been messing with the timeline. The culprits are they're a species, a race called the Oards, O-A-R-D-S, a combination of man and machine, born in vats, and believe in science over anything else. From what I've gathered, So some people think the Oard are the evolution of humans, but in the beginning of the book, there's a part where it says that their origin is obscure, but their influence on the world of Alos is all too apparent, since in the distant future of Alos, the Oard have established a vast and mighty technological empire. Alos' inhabitants could never have been defeated, however, and the Oard Empire never have been founded, if the major races and the power of magic have developed fully here. Some people think that means that they are evolved from humans. I actually think they're aliens. Like aliens that tried to land on Alos and take it over, but were unable to defeat the inhabitants because the inhabitants use magic. And it's my theory, my idea in my head that I got over here, that thinks that since they weren't able to defeat them, the Oard had the technological capability to send agents into the past to try and stop the development of magic. So think Terminator. They're trying to send some Terminators back in the past to make it so the species over here, the humans, the dwarves, the elves, don't get to develop magic, so that when their invasion fleet does arrive, they're able to defeat them and save their race. That's what I think. You can do whatever you want. But unlike in the Terminator movies, these guys come with their weapons, wielding things like gloves that shoot magic missiles, grenades that function like fireballs, tubes that blast targets within a 10-foot square, I actually think of it like a a gravity bomb, amulets that can change their appearance, a belt that gives them armor class of 0, which is AC 20 for any of you 3rd to 5th edition players. Oh, and it lets them levitate, and a bracelet that not only translates other species' language, but also lets them speak it too. And all of this stuff that I just mentioned is all based on technology that can't be used by anyone except for its original user. They're like wired into the controls, which are tuned into like the OR's DNA themselves. So, yeah, players can't get this stuff. Though in the book it does say that you can get 1 to 3 uses out of any of these items with a wish spell, if you want to use a wish spell for one of those things. So, with all that new knowledge that you've just gained, it should be pretty obvious that the Immortals are not a fan. And since the Immortals are not really the type that influence directly, they decide to use the PCs to influence the future of the world to return it to its natural order. Why the PCs? Well, the only reason I can come up with is that the org can only manipulate time on their world, not on parallel planets, thus making the PCs immune to org manipulation to their lives. You know, like the org sending an agent into the past to, delete their parents from existence, that sort of stuff. Yeah, so they can't do it to the PCs. The PCs will be used to influence Alos at 5 separate times in the timeline. Each time could be an adventure on their own, and would be better than some of the things that I have seen published and read before. I'm looking at you, N2. Now, these 5 separate timeline adventures don't have to be run one after another. You can be running an entirely new campaign, and you can send your players to go deal with the first adventure. They'll be sent back into time, into this other planet, pretty much unwillingly, solve the problems for that time period, and then be sent back to their current time on their planet, and only lose a few minutes, and then they can go around and do their adventure, and 2 months later you can spring the next one on them. So we're talking some Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe over here. I don't know if any of y'all have read that. Hopefully most of y'all have. If you haven't, I'm sorry. So, like I said, it's split into 5 separate chapters, partitions, whatever you want to call it. And the first one is called In the Beginning, which is pretty much the Stone Age, where the players are going to have to go back into the past and help the elves and humans survive the OR that are there and save the tree of life that'll be given to the elves to, help them advance in the world. The second one is the Forge of Power, where the players will be going on a Greek odyssey, except instead of in Greece, it's in Alos, and the primary objective is to get this forge and give it to the dwarves so they can make steel or iron. The third one is Bronze and Iron, which is the mass combat part, defeat the evil empire and save the world. The fourth one is called Island of Sorcerers, where they have infiltrated a sorcerers, it's like the center of magic. And the Order have infiltrated it and taken the faces of some of the wizards there. I'm going to try and ruin it that way. And the last and final one is called the Entropy Bubble, where the players are going to commit genocide. Now, each time the players are transported to this world called Alos, the PCs will be pushed to go to a certain location referred to as the Nexus. This part is kind of railroady. There's actually a lot of railroady parts of this entire adventure. But pretty much the PCs should get a bunch of omens and signs that they should go to this hut in the middle of nowhere that once they're inside sends them completely unwillingly to another planet in a parallel universe with little to no preparation or information at all. The only preparation they will get is anything that you happen to, put into the omens that they're told. There is an old guy at this hut. He's a agent for the Immortals who will give the PCs a vague, non-direct description of what's going on. He's not really that helpful. There's also a tapestry in the back that the players can look at. They'll feel like it's vaguely important according to the book. But that's it. They'll step into the hut, vague description, look at tapestry, and poof, they're gone off to the first adventure. 1 second, they're sitting here in this hut with this guy that gives them absolutely no useful information. And next, their ears are hurting from a very loud and annoying whistling sound. Everything spins, and suddenly they're in another hut. But it's not the same hut. And they're surrounded by screaming, yelling, the sounds of battle. And then the door busts open, and there is an elven woman wearing a leather dress that looks like she's gone completely and utterly crazy with fear. Congratulations, the players have made it to Stone Age Alos, and the first part, called In the Beginning. Now, Graham Morris has provided us with a series of maps for this part. There's actually 3 of them. And the only information they have about what is going on right now is, well, it's the screaming and yelling outside and the sounds of battle. It's something that came to mind while I was reading this module. What are the chances the players are able to speak the language of the inhabitants of this planet? I don't think it's very high. You could use that as a complication for your adventure if you want to. Or you could just simplify it by saying they do and just not think too deeply into it. So anyways, the PCs are in this village called Caliphate, which is Point 1. This is the Stone Age elf village and is currently in the process of being deleted from existence by this race called the Garls. Brutish half-men who live in the mountains, have 6 hit die, and fight like level 6 fighters. These guys have been manipulated by the Ward, and there's a few OR disguised as them, as leaders, and, their whole, teaching them how to use all these technologies. And pretty much the Ward went back into the past here to make it so the elves weren't able to get magic too early. One thing to note, at no point in any of the pre-information are you told about the Award. You aren't told what they look like. And at this point, the Award are disguised using their technology to make them look like Garls. The players will be able to see that they're different upon killing one of them, because then their little technology stops working and you get to see the ugly, misshapen, mutated monster cybernetic thing that shows up after you kill it. But there's no information about these OR. The players aren't given any. So anyways, the village will be under attack by 13 Garls riding small rocks, like the bird, not the stone. And they throw gourds filled with exploding fire. And there's also an Ord, one of the 13 is an Ord on a small rock that is disguised as a Garl. Yep. Welcome to Alos. We get to deal with some half ogres flying on rocks that are throwing exploding gourds at you, and there's one dickhead that's also up there throwing fireballs at you. Have fun. Now, once the PCs defeat the Garls, they'll be able to rescue the rest of the elves, who will beg the PCs, who probably look like the incarnations of God, seeing as how they're equipped with steel weaponry and all sorts of crazy magics, and these are literally cavemen elves wearing leathers. They'll ask the players to escort them to the nearby elven village of Loreless. Loreless is Point 2. Here, the PCs will be able to interact with the village leader called Halani, who will be able to tell the PCs about what's happening in the world, and about the Garls. There'll also be a young human named Teb, who will be able to tell the PCs about how the Garls subjugated the humans, but a group escaped their enslavement and made a new encampment called Jolak, which is point number 3. A little while after the PCs have arrived, a treant will arrive and tell everyone about an encroaching Garl army, and the elves should leave this area with the humans. The elves will beg the treant to escort them out, but this request is denied by the treant. The treant will state that he has to stay behind to guard the Great Secret. The Great Secret is the Tree of Life. And this Tree of Life will actually be extremely important in to letting the elves learn magic in the future. And yeah, that's the main point. The Ord are here to destroy the Tree of Life. After this meeting is done between the elves and the treant, the PCs will be approached privately by 3 separate individuals. Teb, the young human, will ask the PCs to head to Jolak and ask the Elder there for the information on where the Garl home base is and destroy it, which is the quick and easy path. The Treant will ask the PCs to go with them to Glaugrove, which is part 4, or point number 4, to help protect the secret. And finally, Helani will ask for the PCs to protect the caravan as they flee west. In reality, the choices the PCs make here is not really that important because it leads to the same end result. There's just a question of how many of the supposed good people die. But it makes the players feel like they have a choice. Either way, you'll end up having to deal with a huge battle at Galgrove. Now, this Garl army is split into 2 parts. There's the Advanced Garl, which consists of 6 Garls, an Or disguised as a Garl, all on small rocks, accompanied by 3 saber-toothed tigers. And then there's the main party of this army, which consists of 15 Garls mounted on 3 Mastodons, so there's 5 Garls on each Mastodon, 5 Garls on small rocks, a disguised Oard on a large rock, 10 Garls on foot, along with 3 saber-toothed tigers. Now, once this grand battle is complete, the PCs will have to head up to the Garl stronghold to finish off this threat. Garls and Oards completely. Now, the Garl stronghold is point number 7, but before that, we got point 5, which is a lake inhabited by 5 air elementals and 4 water elementals, who have a habit of stirring up extremely dangerous storms for the hell of it. And then there's point number 6, which is the snow-covered path that happens to have 25 snow apes and 2 giant snow apes. Section 7 has its own map and is occupied by 96 Garl, a Mastodon, saber-toothed tigers, small rocks, 3 Oards, and a robot tiger. Yep, a robot tiger with 10 hit dice, immune to non-magical damage, and it can see invisible objects. Robot tiger. There's also 60 human slaves here. Once your PCs have finished, completing the complete and utter genocide of the Garl and the Oard in this time period, the PCs will be able to return to their own timeline. But before this happens, they should be able to observe the gifting of the Tree of Life to the elves. And the elves will reward the PCs with like this bracelet with a crystal leaf on it, which will actually be useful in the future. And thus ends part 1. Like I said, the players will not be able to go back until they completely and utterly finish the elimination of the Garl and the Oards in this timeline. We're talking the men, the women, and the children. All of them need to no longer exist. And then once that happens, the PCs will feel a sudden urge to go to this one hut where they'll be sent back to their current time period, where they'll observe that it's only been a few minutes since they left. Now, the second part, called the Forge of Power, pretty much happens in the Bronze Age. So it happens 3,000 years after the party eliminated the threat of the now extinct Garls, and the humans and elves of Alos have developed the rudiments of civilization, magic, literature, agriculture, and the working of bronze. Now, while the elves have decided to stay in their forests, humanity has decided to spread across the world. In the interest of making this not an hour-long video, I'm going to have to cut down on some few things that I usually do in my videos. The gist of this one is the Oards have gone back to this timeline to make it so the dwarves will not be able to get the gift of learning how to make iron and steel. To do this, they've influenced this fire giant called Hephaestion. Actually, that's not his name, that's his race title. I like to think of as a fire giant, who was going to gift them this Forge of Power. Now, the PCs are sent back to this time where they'll end up waking up on this ship. And on this ship, there's going to be a captain whose name is Celios, who will have received a sort of omen from when he was born that a bunch of people in white bronze are going to show up to help him save the world. Well, the white bronze is the steel and iron that your players are wearing, because these guys are all stuck in the Bronze Age. So, While you show up on this world, you'll be riding on this boat with this guy, think Jason the Argonauts here, and there'll be a series of small run-ins you'll have to deal with. On your way to the island where Hephaestion is currently existing, where you'll have to convince him or kill him and give the Forge of Power to the dwarves. These encounters that happen on the ocean is there's a siren song, the shepherds, which is definitely Cyclops. There's a shadow ship that's going to try and board your ship, and the ship's graveyard consists of a whole lot of skeletons. There's some undead here. Once the players are actually able to get to the Hephaestion's island, whose name Demlek, by the way, his name is Demlek, you'll have to deal with not only the Ord, singular, just one Ord that's disguised as a human, but also the things that this fire giant has set up to defend themselves. There are 7 rock living statues. There's a couple of bronze golems. And once again, there is robot tigers. In regards to the ship that you're on, these guys are really not that important. They're going to probably die on the adventure unless you do a lot of effort to keep them alive. But once you get back onto the ship at the end of the adventure, the ship is the cabin inside the ship is what takes you back to your current timeline. The third one is called Bronze and Iron, and this is the one that you're going to need mass combat to get through it. This happens 500 years after the previous adventure, and in this one, the Ord have influenced a group of humans called the Colmetes into trying to take over the rest of this continent. Now, the way the Ord do it is not only are they there in presence, like they themselves disguised as humans, but they have also shared the workings of iron and steel with these humans, which the dwarves, even though you saved them last time, did not share with anybody else, and the elves are being dicks as usual, staying inside their forests. Anyways, the players will have to go through a whole RP element where they will have to convince the 8 independent human tribes to work together. They'll have to go to the dwarves, which case to get the dwarves on your side, you're going to have to go find an old dwarf that was actually around when the players first showed up 500 years ago. And the elves, as long as one of your players is still wearing one of those bracelets with the crystal leaf thing from the first chapter, will recognize the players as the heroes from the beginning of time, because apparently elves live forever. I can't really go into detail about how this whole thing works, because I'm not really familiar with the mass combat system. The Colmetes force is split into 4 separate armies, and they will attack in their own separate directions. There's the advance guard that opens up from the eastern corner. There's the main force that follows on the heels of the advance guard. There's the mountain force that will enter from the southern edge, and there is the sea force that will strike from the sea. Defeating any of these armies will consist of defeating at least 50% of the Colmetes force, and each force usually has at least one Ord that is disguised as a human advisor. Now, how you do this is up to you. They fit an entire invasion of a continent on 4 pages, so it's up to you to expand on it. Also, there's halflings in here, if I didn't mention that. There's humans, there's elves, there's dwarves, and there's halflings, and you're going to try and get them all to work together. The 4th adventure, called the Island of Sorcerers, happens 1,000 years after you just finished the last battle. In that time period, the intelligent races have formed together and formed like a giant school of magic and knowledge. So, like Candlekeep, I guess. On this island where they've built this place, which is called the Island of Sorcerers, they built this place called the Bibliotheca. Inside the Bibliotheca, the repositories of all the knowledge of magic and the history of time is kept there. The Ord decided that this time, instead of the direct plan of action they've been using lately, they're going to go for the subvert part, where they have gone into the past and they've messed with the sorcerers of knowledge and replaced them each with, well, they're not done yet, it's a work in progress. They start replacing each of the grand wizards and sorcerers with an Ord that looks like them. When the players are thrust into this situation, It's right when the Award are planning to send out their envoys, like the disguised Awards. They're going to send them out into the world and start influencing magic from that point. It's up to the PCs to get here, find the actual magicians who are currently hypnotized, and save them, while also eliminating, the imposters. Got to get rid of the imposters. It's important. Once you defeat the imposters and save all the sorcerers, or, you might end up killing them. It's up to you. You just need to kill the Award. You'll be free from this part of the adventure too. This one has a sort of moral dilemma going on in it too. I mean, beyond, the previous versions of genocide the players just committed. The only people that are actually committing evil are the Award. The staff members, all the employees, the workers, the guards in this entire adventure are not aware that the wizards and sorcerers have been replaced by this evil race. Also of note, this time the Award are fully aware of the player characters. They know what they look like. They have received the reports in the future that these guys are the ones that are messing with the timeline, or messing with them trying to mess with the timeline. You get the idea. The Award are on to the PCs at this point. They will recognize them on sight. And the last and final adventure, called the Entropy Bubble, is going to be where the player characters are sent into a time period where the Award kind of have realized that their timeline's coming to an end. So they've created their own separate, Entropy Bubble, which is like its own separate time period where they have a city. There's an Award city that the player characters have to go to. They fight through the whole part, including all the Award leaders, the robots, security robots. They deal with it all, traps included. There's an entire map for it and everything to finally get to point number 16, which is Central Control. In Central Control, there'll be a black column in the middle of it that once it is dealt 150 points of magical damage, the bubble that has surrounded this city, making it so it exists outside of timelines, collapses, and everyone dies. And that's it. That's the adventure. Is it going to be that easy? No, it's not. You're fighting through an entire city. It's not going to be easy at all. There's actually a few traps here. Not only do you have the leader, but you also have power robots, which are the equivalent of iron living statues. You have combat robots that are equivalent to a Drolem. The player characters will be facing off Award in groups, not in singular entities, but in entire squads of security teams. It's not going to be easy, but once they defeat it and they get to point 16 and destroy the black column, they've won. They've completely eliminated the Award from any timeline, and they're all destroyed. As for rewards the players get out of it, the Immortals are cheap. They don't give you anything. I mean, this could be plus points towards trying to become an Immortal, if that's what the players are going towards in the BECMI series. But if you're not playing BECMI, there's no prize. I mean, minus a few little, trinkets you get from some of the other adventures. But you don't really get to bring back most of the things. I'll go on to rating this adventure. In regards to the adventure itself, I'm going to give it a rating of 4 out of 5. I like this one. I've actually always liked this one since I first saw it. The idea of having this constant side main adventure besides your main campaign is kind of cool. And the Award themselves are a really cool enemy that I like and can be implemented in any campaign you want to if you wish to. You can throw them into your main storyline if you want to. In regards to value, you can actually get this one for about $25, like the actual real booklet off of eBay right now. And I think it's worth it. The amount of time you'll get out of this adventure, even though it does require a little bit of work, it's worth $25. You can get the PDF off of DM's Guild too for about $5, I think. In deadliness, I'm going to give this a 4. Yeah, a 4. 4 out of 5. It's deadly. It can be deadly, especially if you're not thinking or if you make poor decisions. So yeah, 4 out of 5. So I hope this review helps somebody out there, and thank you guys for being here. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.